Racing is fun. That's it. We love it. It's a payoff for all of your hard work. It's not the end point, but it sure is a nice little stopover on life's running journey. But how much racing is too much? Can you even race too much? Well, yes. And no. As with everything on this channel, it's nuanced and personal to you. So we're going to run through everything to do with racing. Get it? Run through, oh, forget it. In the hope that you learn everything you need to make your own decisions rather than have some random YouTuber tell you. And if the video helps even a little, then consider clicking the subscribe button and join the journey. Okay, racing, on your marks, set, oh, forget the jokes. Let's do this. Alright, this is how we're going to break the video down. I'm going to split it into 4 sections in order for you to finally make your decision. And the first thing which we're going to talk about in a second is going to be what racing actually is. After that, we'll talk about what it actually does to you. Then we'll talk about what your decision will depend on. And then we will talk about how to make the decision that is right for you. Not anybody else, you. And if you want to follow more of our journey on the day-to-day, then you can find us at Instagram, which I'll show you here. And you can find us on Strava to see what we're up to all of the time. Let's get started. Now, racing can mean so many different things to so many different people, so let's just run very quickly through what racing is, because even the word can mean different things. I suppose the most obvious reason for racing is that it's a payoff. It's a payoff for all of your hard work over weeks and months before that. And I would imagine that's the reason that most of us do it, but not the only reason. Because racing can also just be a very good fitness indicator. Where are you at this moment in time towards your A race, let's call it, your main goal. So this might be a process goal, a B race, something that you're doing as a tune-up, see where you're at. And a lot of people use racing for that as well. And some people couldn't care less about their performance in a race. They couldn't care about where they're at physically. It's more of a social event. I know people that absolutely love races for the doing races, for being in amongst it with people around them, friends maybe, family coming to watch. It's not a performance-based goal, but it's every bit as valid. And if you flip it, of course, you've got performance-based goals. The reasons for racing is to see where you're at in the context of against other people, whether it be in age group or whether it be overall, whether you're a higher level runner, how are you doing even nationally or internationally. Racing is a great way of finding out where you are at. And perhaps my main reason for racing nowadays is that it's an adventure, it's an experience. I get to see new things and do new things, and that's enough for me, just being part of this new culture in Thailand and racing these amazing trail races. That's what I'm in it for. Anything else, performance or whatever, is a bonus to the adventure. Now you know what racing might mean to you, you still need to know what racing can do to you. It's a consideration I think a lot of us underestimate. Obviously, it's going to depend on how you race, whether it's all out or running conservatively. But even when you take that into consideration, the fact you're at a race, a real race, is going to do some things to you. Excitement. It comes from a place of heightened awareness, adrenaline, increased movement. This is before, during and after the race, by the way. And for every up, there's an associated down, usually when you feel like you've been hit by a truck a day or two after. Oh, it takes its physical toll regardless of how hard you run. I liken it to the trick magicians use. When you focus on something for so long, like training for a race or the build up to a magic trick, there is then an equivalent period of not concentrating. In magic terms, that is the moment the magic often happens. And in running terms, when you focus on training for a race, once that race is over, you need some mental downtime. Your brain needs the rest before you go again. So that kind of neatly brings us on to the next point, which is that there is an increased recovery need in racing that there is not necessarily in training. Physical or mental, but it's there. So balance is super important for your body. And then linked to that is, are you training within a structure? Is there a bigger goal, or perhaps you just like training in a periodized way? Well, there can be repercussions in terms of training at the wrong time in a block, or perhaps in a recovery week. It sounds bonkers, but I've actually had to forego races because they don't fit in with my bigger picture. Sure, I can rearrange and tweak my plan to fit me, but I know how to do that safely, and it's what I want you all to eventually be able to do. So as you can see, a thought out, considered and safe approach might not mean as much short-term fun, but it will definitely lead to more long-term joy. Okay, now before before we talk about how to make your decision, we need to talk about the factors that are affecting your decision. I've really timed this wrong because I'm about to run a 10k. Look at those clouds over there. This could be the most hilarious video. I'm gonna get soaked. This is the very start of the 10k, by the way. I've got no chance. I suppose the most obvious factor that will affect your decision of how often you race is going to be what distance you want to race, because being a 1500 meter runner might be a very different prospect to being a marathon runner or training for marathons. You're not going to be able to do the same things over the same time spans. Oh, the wind has really died down over here on the river. It's really peaceful. So while we're here and you can see the grey clouds behind me, let's talk about another reason that might affect how often you race, and that's what level do you want to race at, as in what is your performance level. And we'll dig into that a little more deeply when we start talking about how you make your decision. But very basically what I'm talking about is, are you including a taper into that? Are you including recovery after that? You know, what level do you want your performance to be? Because if this is your A race, and if this is your season's kind of defining moment, then you're going to need to factor in time before and after. So that's going to deeply affect how often you can actually race and perform at your highest level. And of course that might not be anything that you consider, and it's not really something you're worried about, which leads me to my next point. And therefore, your third consideration will be, what's your reason for racing in the first place? We talked about it at the start of the video, and some people just turn up to races because they love the atmosphere, they love the vibe, they love the adventure. And some people turn up to races because they want to push their own buttons and they want to see what they're capable of. They really want to perform. And that could be from a beginner to an elite athlete. Everyone has different reasons, and you need to, I guess, pick your individual reason that is individual to you, nobody else, and then you can start to decide how often you're going to race once you know your reason for racing. Okay, still managing to avoid the rain. And actually, you might want to consider the time of year that you're racing, because let's take the UK for example. Depending on the distance, there really are, let's say, marathons. You've got the early season, which is March, April, May for marathons, and then it tapers off during the summer, maybe because it's too hot, well probably because it's too hot, but then you come back September, October, November, there are more marathons available. Brighton, London has been moved previously to October, so depending on the time of season, there might not be a large amount of races available, or there might be a load, and you have to take that into consideration. Oh, loud boat! You have to take that into consideration when you're looking ahead, when you're planning your season. I made it home, and you know what? I avoided the rain, and I really didn't think I would, so sorry, all that jeopardy and no payoff. But while I'm here, I might as well give you the last consideration that I think you need to think about before you decide how often you race, and that is, what's your budget? Because races can be a bit spenny. I mean, they can be cheap. You got park run, 5k completely free, but you go all the way up to something like an Ironman, which is £500 to £600, superb value. Not. So you got everything up to Ironman and in the middle, and really it depends on what can you afford and what are you comfortable with affording. So that's always a consideration for me, because it's nice to have a medal, nice to have a t-shirt, but sometimes it's also nice to have the money in the bank to buy those new trainers or that new watch or something else as well. Okay, 10k done. That's my last run before the race, and now we're going to a race. We're on our way to the Race Expo right now. We're actually doing a 20-kilometer trail race this weekend, so we're quite excited, using Google Maps to get there. And it's worth talking about now making your decision. And the first thing I'd say is, really, it depends on why you're racing. If you are racing just to be there because you love it rather than for performance, or if you're racing shorter distances, maybe 5 or 10k, then why not race regularly? I don't think there's any harm in that. Could even be every week or every other week if you're doing 5 or 10Ks. I think with half marathons it's a little bit different. Maybe once a training block, which is 4 weeks, or once a fortnight maybe. Marathons, different beast altogether. But what about if it's marathons that you're after? Well, all I can say is my own experience, and that is that I tend to be able to knock off about 3, maybe 4 marathons a year if I get it absolutely right. But you have to take into account your taper. You have to take into account what a marathon does to your body, so therefore your recovery. And then you have to take into account when marathons are accessible, which is not all year round. There's early season and then there's later season, and you can't stay fit for the entire year. Fitness comes in peaks and troughs. So peak for the marathon, dip back down, get into some more training, go back up, peak for the second half of the season. That's how I do it, and that means I tend to be able to run 3, maybe 4 marathons a year. This is actually the finish line for the race that we're doing in a couple of days as well. Ultimately, it's like I keep saying, it's completely individual to you. There is no right answer, there is no wrong answer. But what I would say is, if you want to race lots, then you have to set your expectation to what that means, and it tends to mean that you're not going to PB very much. It's going to be about the experience, and if you're alright with that, which a lot of people are, I am, then that's okay. But it has to be about you, and it has to be about just understanding the process and what's going to happen to your body. That's all I would say. And if performance is your bag, again, all I can do is give you my experience from a racing perspective and a coaching perspective. Then, like we just mentioned, your fitness goes in peaks and troughs. So what I often do is I try to put lots of races around the time that I know I'm going to be in my peak fitness if I want to perform. And then what I'll do is I'll have my A race, my goal race, maybe at the end of a run of 2, 3, 4 races, and I'll have tune-up races before that. I'll have races to correct things that went wrong. I'll have races to see how I feel, what do I need to tweak for the race, and to kind of tune me up. So you can stack your season that way. You can put lots of races in a short period of time while your fitness is high, and then allow it to dip, allow you to recover, and then go again later in the season if you're looking for performance. And that just about wraps that up. So hopefully I've been able to give you some information that will help you make a decision about how often you race. If I have, then consider clicking the subscribe button and joining the journey, but no hard sell. And if you want to decide how many times you run in a week, guess what? I've got a video for that too. And below it is a video on the 8 unexpected consequences of running, and I'm pretty certain some might shock you. Okay, off to race. The next 2 videos are going to be our experience of the race, so I'll see you on Wednesday.